Hi again, everyone. This is Jack Gescheidt from the TreeSpirit project for my COVID Chronicles, making the best of a very strange situation. I don't even want to say bad because I'm excited to speak with someone I've known for a few years, Dr. Will Tuttle. And although I've known him for years and kind of read his bio way back, I asked him to send me that. And just in brief, anyway, for those people who care about credentials, which is another fascinating conversation because I basically have none. Will Tuttle is a Ph.D. in education from UC Berkeley, but to me, I know him as the author of the best-selling World Peace Diet. He's let's see, since 1980, so that's a 40-year. I was saying 30-year, Will, but a 40-year vegan, meaning he's eating a plant-based diet. And when I hosted a Cowspiracy movie documentary screening in Sausalito in 2014, now 6 years ago, some guy called me up out of the blue who didn't know who he was, named Dr. Will Tuttle, and offered to run the Q&A. And it turned out, to my surprise, oh, he's in the movie. So how cool is that? That you, Will, were willing to come and run a Q&A, which you did. And I've learned so much since about animal issues and vegan issues and health issues. And beyond that, you're also a pianist, a composer, a Dharma master in the Zen tradition. I know you're familiar with the Buddhist community. And I'm still learning so much from you. And if I can keep up with your quick mind, I'll stop talking now and let you in on this. But I'm really glad for you to join a conversation with me. I'm enjoying these and trying to find this opportunity to spend more time online, which I really dislike. But of course, I know the value of it. It's just TV, Jack, I tell myself. So with that long intro from Jack, this is Dr. Will Tuttle. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. And I think we were going to talk a little bit about this current pandemic, COVID-19, and animal agriculture. So, I just want to say maybe one or two main points, and that is that I think one of the emphasizing the World Peace Diet is that there's something I call the boomerang effect, which is basically an ancient spiritual teaching that we all know in our bones, which is as I sow, so shall I reap. Whatever we put out comes back in some way. And to me, this is a really right in our faces implication because our routine abuse and violence for food primarily, but for other uses as well, towards animals people have been warning about this for years, that the hyper-confinement of cows and pigs and chickens, turkeys, ducks, geese, all these different animals is bringing into our world not only a lot of terrible violence and disease for these animals, but when you have them just stuck cheek to jowl in very confined areas, and living in their own feces and urine and so forth, and just horribly unhygienic conditions by the thousands or tens of thousands in one building very often. This is typical animal agriculture. This is not in China. This is in China, but it's also in India. It's also in the United States, and it's everywhere, basically. We're forcing animals into these situations. And it's well understood that very heavy and massive, really massive amounts of antibiotics, there's over 10,000 different drugs and chemicals and hormones that are also used to keep the animals alive and to push them to produce more milk, to get fatter and so forth. All kinds of toxic chemicals and hormones are added. So you have all of that going on, and these animals are enormously stressed and unhappy. Very often they're driven literally into insanity by the hyper-confinement. Pigs are banging their heads against bars, just driven crazy because they can't turn around. So we have just the perfect storm continually going on, generation after generation, really, of horrific bacterial and pathogenic microbes that are going to be that would never arise anywhere else on planet Earth if we didn't create these conditions.
So I just want to tease this out because it depends who we're speaking to here, and I'm assuming we're speaking to more of a lay audience, which, frankly, even in this regard, was me 30 days ago, before COVID-19, this current coronavirus hit. I guess I'd kind of vaguely heard, infectious diseases or Ebola or SARS or MERS, but I wasn't aware of it much. And it's only in the last 30 days that I've started posting videos as I dig into this stuff. And I speak, the other one is Dr. Michael Greger, whom you know is a friend of yours, who says basically what you said in his clever little snippet sentence, which is, if you want to breed infectious diseases, build factory farms. Which you're
Right.
giving the detail of it, but I mean, I just want to slow this down because you're so bright and you live in this world for so many years. I'm not that bright, but I speak quickly. But I've just got all this in the last month, and it's just like it's a paradigm challenge. It's a game changer, and it's not like put veganism aside. Well, you know,
Right.
and we don't have to, of course, but just for argument's sake, so that people will listen.
Right.
Even if you want to eat some meat or you think you can do backyard chickens or whatever the arguments are, fine, hold on to those. But the reality is that what is it, 98% or 99% of our meat, which is in this country, cows, pigs, and chickens, come from factory farms. That's what you need to do to make this stuff efficiently to feed 350 million Americans, then export to the world as we perhaps do, I think, still to Europe, you know, for profit, which is fine. Oh, that's fine. Do that if you want, but this is what you're going to get when you do that.
Well,
Maybe we don't want to do this for that reason, just infectious disease breeding, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, I would for sure, first of all, say it's not fine in the sense that, the main reason say we shouldn't be doing this because of the horrible violence towards animals. I mean, these animals are enduring misery their entire lives. And so just from the ethical perspective, that's probably the most powerful thing. But if we don't care about animals, we don't care about hungry people who are starving because we're feeding most of the food to these imprisoned animals where they're going hungry. I mean, that's another thing. You know, we have about 25 to 30,000 people dying every day of hunger. This has been going on for decades. And we're not in some kind of big hoo-ha about that. We're killing a lot more people that way directly, really, by just keeping food from them and basically killing them. And we're not worried about it. We're not stopping the economy or making any changes to help them. Suddenly we care about a few thousand people a day dying from coronavirus, but we don't care about 30,000 dying every day of hunger, completely preventable. So, but if we don't care about people, right, that aren't, you know, other people we don't care about, if we don't care about animals, we don't care about future generations, or we don't care about ecosystems, all we care about is ourselves and our own health, then for sure, yeah, we should question animal agriculture, especially, of course, so-called factory farming, where we hyper-confine these animals, as I've been saying. And as you say, Michael Greger, he does a great job. Other people, too, that do a great job on this. And I talk about this actually in this book that you mentioned, The World Peace Diet. I have a whole
Wait,
chapter on the health
hold it up again.
impact.
Hold that up again, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say,
That's funny.
I'm
You were
just
giving a
looking at
talk
this.
once, hold it up, and I took the book in your hand and I said, hold it like they do in the ads so people can actually see it. Thank you.
Right.
I'm forcing you to do
Yeah,
it against your will. Against your will.
there's the chapter in here that goes into the health impacts, and I talk about how salmonella and listeria and these things, these foodborne illnesses, mad cow disease and so forth, these have nothing to do with what we're talking about now, but these are big killers already. They have been for a long time. And then, like you say, these other strange, you know, MERS and SARS and Zika and this and that and the other, and all these other that have been coming every couple of years are all coming out of the hyper-confinement of pigs or cows or camels, actually in one case, other animals for human food. So I think it's really important just to see, as we sow, we reap. So what I like to do is be aware of that on the surface. Also to say one other thing, which is that animal agriculture itself, even without factory farming, even just having it more somehow like the good old days when you had each farmer had a few cows and they're out in the field and this and that, it still basically is the reason for the arising in human society of influenza and of, you know, the old plagues, the bubonic and these old plagues. That's why when Europeans came here, this country, to North America, for example, where there was no animal agriculture, they killed, the people all died here. The Indians died because they hadn't been living with animals around them. In Europe, they had the cows downstairs and they lived upstairs, you know, that kind of thing. So they, over the many years, generations and generations and centuries, they developed, an internal ecology to live with those bacteria and viruses and so forth. But it just wiped out so many people.
I
So
also
animal
just read
agriculture
recently.
has been, this has been a problem for a long time.
I also read recently. I don't know the details of it, and I need to get better educated about it. But I think it was a Greger video, Dr. Michael Greger video, but it was when European immigrants came to this country and infected the Native American populations with new diseases they'd never been exposed to and had no resistance to. The reverse wasn't true, which is the Native American population didn't have diseases
Right.
to infect Europeans with. Is that your understanding? I don't know if you're versed in that.
Yeah.
You're an educated guy. I don't know whether you're an MD or know that virology.
Well, and no, it's. I mean, because they weren't living with animals in the same way. They were living more harmoniously with themselves. They had animals were around them, but they weren't imprisoning animals
Right.
and keeping them right there with them.
Our domestication of animals in close quarters and then unsanitary. And then, of course, it's changed. I remember I did read that since the Industrial Revolution, of course, our diseases increased because of the type of production and the compactness of the production. When we want to
Right.
do a business efficiently, you want to raise chickens efficiently, well, you put them in battery cages or you put them in big sheds that are free range, jammed in together, but there's not a metal cage around them, but they're so close together. Then they're, as you say, they're in their own unsanitary conditions is a nice way to put it. Feces and urine is the other way to put
Oh,
it. And then it's just a breeding grounds for disease. And do you even know, I was building a short list. I haven't compiled it yet, but just the number of diseases that have come from chickens in confinement. And I believe influenza was one of those. Is that correct?
right. Well, I think influenza came from ducks. They
Ducks, right,
think, and
right,
ducks passed it to chickens.
right.
Because we started imprisoning ducks, and then for duck meat, and then chicken meat, and they were together, and it went from a more waterborne virus to an airborne respiratory for the chickens, and then it went to us through the air. So yeah, it's been this kind of perverse imprisonment of animals that has really been creating these viruses. And there's quite a bit of information about that. But the thing I just want to emphasize here in our interview is to take it one step deeper, because I think it's really important for us, I think, to see, this is what my main interest really in this whole thing is to try to understand this at a deeper level, which I think is even more powerful in a certain sense. I mean, I think the physical level is certainly powerful, and we're creating these. But I think the real problem, the reason we're so ineffective at dealing with these issues, is that animal agriculture, unfortunately, it disconnects us from our natural wisdom and sense of being part of a web of life. The animal agriculture, when you do this for 10,000 years, we've been owning animals as property for food for 10,000 years. It started in Iraq, and our culture today, we have been refining this and developing this and destroying any cultures that don't engage in it, basically, so that now we have this global animal agriculture society that's based on imprisoning and horribly sexually abusing and killing billions of animals routinely, relentlessly, regularly, and virtually everyone except for vegans is participating in that. We're taking out our wallets and paying for it. So we're the actual causal agents, but we don't just cause this suffering to these animals, we then eat it, right? So we're not just eating the food coming from these animals, we're eating a whole set of values and ideas and a narrative, a story about our relationship with nature and animals that allows us to do this. And this is the real problem. I think this is the underlying driving, spinning fury at the core of this. It's invisible. You can't think, most people are not aware of this. So I just want to say maybe three things. One is that the underlying mentality of domination and exploitation of animals is one of disconnectedness, where we learn to disconnect from our natural sense of empathy and kindness, but also our natural capacity to connect dots. Because we eat. I'm eating a burger, but every day I want to think, no, it's not a cow. I don't want to think about that. It's just a burger. So every day I'm disconnecting. That intelligence is the capacity to make relevant connections. But in an animal agriculture society, when we're sitting together, socializing, and this is a ritual. It's the most powerful ritual in any society. You're eating meat, eating food, the meals. But if we're eating animal foods, especially coming from these terrible conditions, we don't want to think about it. So we're just learning to disconnect, and we're basically on a cultural level reducing our intelligence with every meal, I would say in many ways with every generation. And so our intelligence has gotten so reduced at this point, even though I know we think we're so smart, but really when it comes to actual intelligence, we don't make the connections. We just don't see this.
And I would say, separate from the thinking mind, I would call it
yeah,
our intuitive intelligence.
I would say it's intuitive intelligence. It's affective intelligence. In other words, emotional intelligence. Emotional sensitivity. I'd also say it's actually cognitive intelligence. Really cognitive intelligence. I mean, actual intelligence to understand what's actually happening. We don't have it. As a society. I used to teach college courses in the tragedies, the ancient Greek tragedies, and the hero. There's always typically a tragic hero suffers from two basic flaws. That's why the hero falls. And one is hubris, which is pride. The other is obtuseness. They can't figure out what's going on. They're just kind of like not quite clever enough. And I think this fits us perfectly today. We think we're superior to animals and to nature, and we also don't see. Actually, it's not our fault. See, I'm not blaming anyone. It's just this is a systemic problem. Each one of us has been systemically wounded by being just required, like I was as a little kid, to eat dairy products and eggs. So I was required to I didn't know what it was. I love bacon, yum, 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 all that fat and salt. I didn't know. I just thought it was delicious. But if I had known what it was, I would have been, whoa, what is this? We just don't know. And so this is the wound in our entire society. And when that wound gets in at a deep level, it just kind of shuts down this natural sense of kinship with nature, with trees, with the beauty and of the ecology around us, because we're essentially destroying it. And I lived in an RV for 17 years and traveled. I've given lectures and traveled in all 50 states, many times, as well as over 50 foreign, countries in the world. I've seen this everywhere. And this human beings are, I would say, in a sense, a virus, in the sense that we're spread into every nook and cranny, to the bottom of the oceans, just everywhere, the jungles, with animal agriculture destroying oceans habitat, rainforest habitat, any kind of prairie or forest habitat. Just in general, animal agriculture pollutes the water, destroys soil. Cuts down and destroys ecosystems. We're causing about 200 species to go extinct now, according to many biologists, every single day because of the destruction of rainforest and ocean for this war against animals. So this is the problem. And so we're not only on the outer level creating strange viruses and things, but on a deeper inner level, culturally and socially and psychologically, I think, and even I would say spiritually, we are lost in materialism, in a very shallow view of the world that just basically reduces everything to matter. Cows and pigs and chickens are just matter. Everything is matter.
Objects.
And that's the problem. I think. See, that's what we have to see. When we reduce everything to matter, then suddenly I'm just a material body, and those are just material bodies. And let's see that what we are is consciousness, that awareness, which is actually non-physical. We're functioning through a physical body. This basic wisdom has been crushed, and we see everything mechanically, and we try to kind of manipulate everything. We see each other human beings, as just objects that we try to manipulate through sales and marketing and this and that to get what we want. And then what ends up happening, this is my final point, is that we end up basically becoming ourselves the very thing we fear. This is the shadow. This is the deep shadow of our society that I try to talk about in the World Peace Diet. Essentially, for example, when I go into the store and I want to buy fish sticks or a hamburger or a milkshake or something, I take out my wallet and I pay, right, for that. That is it. When I pay for animal-based foods, I become, in a sense, a virus, right? I mean, I become this invisible force that somewhere another being, a cow or pig or chicken, another being who's conscious and aware and wants to be free and live their lives, is going to be horribly abused. Is going to be hyper confined. Is going to be raped. Is going to be killed because I want my meat, right? I want my dairy. I want my whatever it is. So to that cow, I am this invisible force of death. And because of me, because of my desire to eat meat and dairy, I become a force of death for that being. And now we have a whole population of people who are going around, there's these invisible forces of death, these viruses, these mysterious invisible things. We can't see them. They're so tiny, but they're going to get us. They're everywhere. I got to wear a mask. I got to keep social distance. We're all terrified of each other because of these invisible forces. We're sowing these invisible forces. We are these invisible forces. This is the reason why the silver lining in this whole thing for me is
Please.
it's how this can somehow jolt in a way to realize this. And see, the final and the very last thing I want to say is that I'm not going to
remind me of me as a photographer. Just one more picture, one more pose, and of course, on we go.
Yeah, just
Continue.
one thing, because this is a thing. I was just thinking about this. It was many years ago. It was 50 years ago. I read George Orwell's 1984. I was probably, whatever I was, 15, 16 years old. I was in high school. And I remember reading that book, and it's shocking. It's a world, it's this dystopian future where human beings are exploited brutally by a very powerful elite. We're all just reduced into just completely controlled situation. And now it's so interesting because a lot of people are worried not only about the virus, like what it's doing, but a lot of people are worried about the government overreach, and like we're all losing our freedom of speech, our freedom of assembly, our freedom of religion, all our freedoms are being taken away. Some people are saying, yeah, right, there's this dystopian
I gave that up long ago.
that's coming, So I have to say, listen, we have to take all of this seriously, because what is animal agriculture actually doing? Animal agriculture is basically us as human beings, each one of us, essentially, as we're part of this, basically planning and enacting and enforcing a dystopian future on generation upon generation upon generation of animals, of cows and pigs and chickens and all these animals. Their future is dystopian. Their kids are going to suffer, and their kids are going to suffer, and it just goes, and there's no way out. They're born into imprisonment. They're born into horror and torture and death in a meaningless universe where they're killed all by themselves and in terror. So we've been planning and plotting a dystopian future for billions of beings, and we've been doing it for a long time. What gives us any kind of moral grounds to not have that happen to us? And I think that's what we have to understand. If we're going to keep sowing this dystopian future for billions of other beings, we're going to be experiencing the same thing. And the thing is, people can say, well, not me, I'm a vegan. I'm a vegan, so I'm not causing that. Well, vegans are going to be caught in the same net, essentially, because this is our culture, and our culture has been sowing these seeds for a long time. So this is really the wake-up call. I'm feeling this very powerfully that if we fail to awaken out of the violence of animal agriculture, when it's really becomes so completely obvious and the forces are now in place, if we're at all paying attention, then we need to, I think, now connect more deeply with our inner wisdom, share the truth like you're sharing with this show right now. I think, Jack, is really important to try to understand the significance of COVID-19 right now, and what each one of us can do actually to be, as Gandhi said, the change we want to see in the world. What each one of us can do to actually be a healing force, and not just half asleep, but to be fully awake to what's really going on here. Okay.
You remind me of me, Will, and I'm playing host, so I'm going to let you run. And it's like, you have.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I know you wanted to jump in, but thanks for letting me say that.
It's fine, Will, and I'm from New York, born and bred, and I'm fully capable of interrupting anybody, including the President of the United States, any President of the United States, not specifically. So no worries. I'm practicing listening, which is challenging because I'm hosting this show, whatever this is. But I just want to. So I agree with everything you say, and I love that you go into the spiritual and metaphysical dimensions of this, and I'm still kind of trying to grok one of the main tenets of your book, The World Peace Diet, which is to say we human beings as a species can't be at peace when we're dominating all these other animal species. And I'm schizophrenic, and so am I, which is I'm constantly aware of my rational mind, where I was, conditioned to really focus on that and discard everything I couldn't see. What Ram Dass termed a philosophical materialist. But of course, now I've been, as I like to joke, Californicated for over 20 years, and I have had experiences that I can't explain that open me up to other realms. And there's, to put it in a simple way that everybody could agree on, there's much more to this life and this world than meets the eye. There's other stuff going on, and I'm kind of always where even when I speak, especially not even especially when I speak to you, I want to go down the spiritual path, but I'm aware there's part of me saying, well, if my friend, Richard back in New York hears this, he'll just tune out because it's just too big a leap. So that's why I keep going back to the practical, not to pull you out of the spiritual, but just to add that flavor. So this discussion can be of more value to more people. And so that's why I piss off a lot of the vegan community, although I consider myself a vegan, whatever that term means. When I give talks and I say, look, you don't even have to quit meat. I mean, fine if you can, but not everybody's wired to do that. I wasn't wired to do it. I was actually, when I said, okay, after Cowspiracy years ago, okay, I really should quit meat. It was like, oh my God, it was the typical thing of, here's all the things I can't eat anymore. Not just yum yum bacon, but chicken and fish and eggs and milk and yogurt and ice cream. And just, that's what comes to my mind. And I think I'm trying to speak to that person who says, no freaking way, that's just not going to happen. To that person, I say, you can eat all of those foods. Jack, the vegan, gives you permission.
Right.
Just eat less of them. That's kind of like, no one will say it's going to hurt me to eat less of them. And to eat, like your mom and your grandmom said, eat more of your vegetables, right? And, get regular exercise and think positive thoughts as opposed to listening to all day, every day, COVID-19, put on a mask, you're all going to die. I mean, everybody can sense
That's very important.
Watch too much of that. I need to keep informed, but after a while, I'm going to go outside and take a walk into, areas like this picture behind me of sequoia trees. So I totally agree. COVID-19 is an amazing silver lining opportunity amid the number of people that are dying, which, easy to say. I mean, I've spoken to doctors and nurses who are watching people die in larger numbers than usual from this specific virus. So I want to, acknowledge that and not just brush it aside. But I think the numbers are tiny compared to the numbers of people that are actually dying from all the diseases that you know better than I do in this culture from eating processed foods and a lot of heavily meat and dairy and egg foods.
That's right.
Don't need to eat that stuff. And it makes our entire, I mean, I know you're one of those people that's so healthy, and I'm getting older, but I consider myself pretty healthy, kind of like Chris Cuomo, the CNN announcer. If I get this, I'll be okay. And he was kind of wallowed by it. He's not going to die. He didn't go to the hospital, but it was a bigger deal, and it's a nasty strain. So I don't downplay it. But I know you're confident, like your immune system can handle this. We're designed to handle this stuff. Of course, it would help not to be breeding these superbugs. But if we have a healthy diet, which is a plant-based diet, we're less vulnerable to getting these diseases in the first place with a healthy immune system designed to repel this stuff, as you were saying the other day. And if you get it, it won't be as virulent in your body because you're healthy. So everybody knows that a lot of the people that are dying from this, the people most susceptible are the old and the infirm. But I'd also argue that our society has the pre-existing condition of diabetes, heart disease, obesity, all these, what are they called, lifestyle diseases, right?
Right.
Which we have control over. So again, good news, right? We can change our habits. And this is a wake-up call. Like, you know what? Eat less meat. And I'm willing now, because that Jack is just incessant. He's following in his mentor's students, Will Tuttle's footsteps for 40 years now, saying, are you willing to look at where this stuff comes from? And just last thing is an anecdote, but it happened last night. I spoke to my brother, 2 years older. I've got an older brother who was a vegetarian for 30-something years, but he still eats eggs and dairy and ice cream and so on, and chocolate cake. God bless him. And like, fine, if everybody just did that, it would be a huge shift. It would drop animal consumption by like 85%. And that's why I keep saying, I have 2-3 portions of these foods per week instead of 2 or 3 servings of them per day. But he was talking about how he and I both had experiences with our father, separate experiences, but the same experience where our dad taught us to put a worm on a fishing hook.
Yeah, right.
And I remember that. I mean, it brought me to tears just thinking, I was a little kid, I don't know, whatever I was, 4 or 5 or something, and this wriggling worm on this hook, and I'm impaling like, oh my God, I didn't even want to put his head in and put it along the hook the way you're supposed to. I'll do it kind of sideways twice, because that just seemed less brutal. I knew intuitively, this is really mean to this worm. I mean, it's just not nice. But my dad, who loves me, a loving man who would be on the floor with animals, would say, no, well, this is what we do. And this is how you catch a fish. And it's, I mean, he didn't go into long talks about it, but that was the implicit lesson. And that's back to, again, what you talk about, which is where this is passed on from generation to generation, well-meaning people who love us, loving people, good people who don't know any better.
Yeah, it's a wound that goes through the generations of disconnectedness. Yeah, you have to
And
disconnect.
now is the opportunity to wake up more to this and be able to
Right.
face it. And I mean, I was 50 years not thinking this way. I was aware of it, but pushing it away. And I think that points to your point about the psychic injury we do ourselves. Like there's part of me
Right.
that's a very strong voice saying, no, that's wrong. And instead of listening to it and allowing it, and maybe having a discussion with it. However, it's like, no, tamp it down, push it down. It's too upsetting. And and the challenge for me, my lesson is when I talk to people who aren't eating a plant-based diet is not to judge them, because I'm judging myself. I was that way for 50 years and it doesn't work to judge people. And I
Right.
got to say, that's really hard for me to do. That is my spiritual growth, to not judge people. It's such a deep habit for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think all of us, like I say, have been wounded by this. No one would be eating this way if they weren't basically required to do so from infancy by very well-meaning people. And I would just say, the other thing is instead of actually eating the flesh or of animals a few times a week, there's now so many plant-based alternatives that really are almost indistinguishable. You can buy plant-based cheese, ice cream, meat, burgers, and other things. I don't think they're that healthy compared to what we eat, which is basically just whole grains, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. But to move in that direction is really a fantastic. It's like that. People think we're giving something up, but what we're getting is, as you know, is so fulfilling on every level. I mean,
Peace
I'm
of
giving up.
mind.
I play the piano. I'm so glad that my father, when I was a kid, said, if you want to take lessons, you got to practice. I'm not going to pay for lessons if you don't practice. And so, I was giving up some time of running around outside with my friends, but I was building something that I'm so delighted I can sit down at the piano and just play, right? So discipline translates into freedom. It looks like discipline. It looks on the outside like discipline, but it's really inside, it's an inner yearning. It takes no discipline not to eat animal foods when we understand I'm causing suffering to a cow or other human beings. But in the beginning, it may seem like discipline. The underlying idea is that freedom and joy of a healthy vehicle that we can run around in, and being contributing more to a healthy world is just, you can't put a price on that. I mean, it's so beautiful, and to have a purpose in life that we wake up in the morning and we're excited about, right? So these are the kinds of things that look like we're giving something up, but we're getting our purpose back. Because when we eat animal foods, we're basically stealing their purposes, and we end up as a culture losing our purpose. And I think that's a huge problem. That's probably one of the biggest viruses, is this virus of just loneliness, isolation, and purposelessness that many people feel. And so I think this could also, another silver lining could be maybe awakening out of that and realizing, gosh, I have a purpose. And it is forcing a lot of people to maybe do some introspection, because we can't be as busy as we were. That can be another good thing, right? We have some more time. So I would suggest, take more time for introspection and really questioning what I'm going to be doing with the remaining years on this earth, and what really gets me up in the morning to be excited to give, to serve something larger than just myself. I think that's the key to happiness. And
I
when
think
we do that,
it's huge. And part
yeah,
to do that is to disconnect a little bit. I was on a Trader Joe's line right now, and everybody, including me briefly, trying to email you saying I'm running late because the line at Trader Joe's to get groceries is so long. It's easy
right.
to, like, there's a moment's notice, a moment's peace or quiet, or I'm waiting on a line, and I can just breathe and do kind of a mindfulness or meditation, whatever you want to call it, or I can do email or send a text or get on the phone or listen to the radio. I mean, this is a pocket computer. It's an amazing tool, but it's also, as everybody knows, an addiction, and it's challenging to just put it down. And of course, as I say that, I'm talking to a freaking computer screen. So this is a dystopian. I mean, I've resisted being online more because I don't enjoy it as much as being with people. I'm a people person for sure. And yet,
Right.
forced inside, well, okay, this is how I'm going to speak to people. So there's the silver lining, the thing I don't want.
Yeah.
And also at Trader Joe's, people are now, we're supposed to wear a face mask, which doesn't make much practical sense unless you're close to people, which we weren't. It's suburbia here, so
Right.
we're 8 feet out on a line. And then people wear their phone and their mask. And I'm like, oh my God, even when we go outside now, it's
Yeah.
acceptable to just sort of psychically as well
It
as
is.
physically.
It's kind of like we're not smiling to each other. We're not speaking up. Really, you have this thing, covering our mouth. It's kind of like just putting everybody into a prison. It's a prisoning
So I
system
went out of
where
my way.
you don't connect.
So I went out of my way, and I encourage other people to do this. I spoke to another friend in the store who I might bring on and to have a discussion as well. But we go out of our way to just, it's good for me. It's good for the person doing it as well as the recipient. I thanked the workers at Trader Joe's. Like, thank you. I mean, they're kids and they probably feel pretty not so vulnerable. But
Yeah.
thank you for coming here and stocking the shelves and doing the long hours and all the cleaning,
Right.
being in the front line. And they're totally eager. I mean, everyone's eager to receive appreciation or praise, but
Yeah.
they're looking for, because I think most people are pulled back, so they're not getting much interaction with the customers anymore.
Right.
So this again is the opportunity. When the
Right.
pressure's on and the vice is on, if we're nice to each other as we're able to, it makes us relax the system, which is good for us, the doer. And of course, the recipient appreciates, oh, someone's reaching out, and they come out all of a sudden. I mean, that's what I learned about New York, this place where people who are not from the New York City culture go there and think, my God, everybody's busily and hustling and running around like salmon up a crowded stream to the spawning grounds every single day,
Right.
every single minute. They're so unfriendly. And it's quite the opposite in New York, because people around each other all the time, they're extremely friendly, even if they, like I do, talk too fast. So there's an opportunity in this too for us to be, well, as everyone is saying now, we're all connected. So go
Right.
figure. The extremes here of terror and fear and blaming and everything's wrong, to the opportunity to feel more deeply connected to the rest of humanity.
Yeah. Well, I think we probably should wrap it up.
Yes.
It's been really interesting. I think the final thing might be just to encourage everyone to make sure you get outside and connect with nature every day, and connect with sunshine, get vitamin D, eat more totally plant-based foods is really important. I think healthy, plenty of vitamin A and C through the vegetables. And also remember that our body actually creates millions of different actual drugs, in a sense, hormones and chemicals and so forth, based on not only our food, but our attitude. And to cultivate a sense of appreciation and joy for this lifetime, because I think the fear and stress can make more disease in people, so I think the idea of this whole idea of infection, to try to infect others with something positive, right? That's what you're saying, thanking the workers.
I would say transmit rather than infect, but as you wish.
Yeah, transmit. Right. No, exactly. I think we have this. We're all spreading these. We're all spreading something, right? And another word that I've been using actually for our business. Our business is karuna, music and art, Karuna, which is an old Sanskrit word that means compassion. And it's so interesting to me that karuna and corona are so similar. So to me, it's like we need an epidemic of karuna, right? We need an epidemic of, a whole, to just let other people transmit that to them, compassion.
We can
Because
transmute coronavirus. I'm sorry, transmute coronavirus to coronavirus.
Coronavirus, right?
Beautiful.
You can each be a carrier of the coronavirus.
Beautiful, Will.
Yeah.
Wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much. Pleasure. Will Tuttle, World Peace Diet. Jack Gescheidt, Tree Spirit Project, to be continued. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay.